The Fix is in. The Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE. It's that simple. Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby. Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, The Sports Fix on social media, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE. Join the Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Welcome in, everybody, for the very first time in a brand new year. 2015 is upon us, and so is the Sports Fix. Welcome in, my friends, across the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rock back with you guys. Jerry Myers kicking things off, and man, what a, I'll tell you what, I was thinking back just a few minutes ago as the preliminary announcements were rolling there with the show. I was thinking about how we ended the last show of the year a couple of days ago. And, looking back and saying, the usual, wow, I can remember the first day. And, you can remember starting the year and going, oh, well, it's January. It's time to start another year. But probably not specifically what we were talking about. It's not going to be too hard to remember the first Sports Fix of 2015 when we get down to the end of the year, because it'll be the day that we're talking about Buckeyes, baby. As I'll tell you what, looking back at those shows earlier this week, we did Monday and Tuesday before we took off for the New Year's holiday. And by the way, Happy New Year's to each and every one of you listening here. And flipping the page is truly what it is. Do not carry the baggage. It's so hard to say that because this is Cleveland sports, and I know that they don't care about us, but don't carry the baggage of last year on into 2015 with you here as you move it along. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Looking back at the beginning, the couple of shows at the beginning of this week, and man, beating ourselves upside the head. I mean, it's literally not our fault, the things that were going on. But, there was just frustration. The Browns and the end of their season and the Cavaliers, all of that, which, by the way, of course, we're going to talk about some of that here today, too. But talking about wiping the slate clean, talking about a fresh way to turn the page to the calendar, refreshing. And I don't just mean because the good guys, the home guys, the Ohio State Buckeyes, baby, not just because it's our team that took care of some business last night and now advances to the first true national final game here with the college football playoff, but it's the kind of story that it is too. It's everybody's Buckeyes team. Like, you can get into that team. Look, there's sometimes, whether they're your team or not, that teams are just not very nice, or they're not a particularly endearing story. Maybe they're just a football team. Hey, it's not always about the social aspect of things too, but man, this is not only a hell of a football team. This is not only, the hometown interest and all of that stuff, the pride and the civic and all of that. This is a hell of a story, period. I mean, talk about a story of redemption throughout the season, and a team that not only improved from one year to the next, but from the beginning of the season to the end, and through not one, not two, but three different quarterbacks. You know where I'm going with that, man. I mean, Cardale Jones is clearly not your average third-string quarterback. So I do laugh when we joke about our third-string quarterback can beat yours. But seriously, how many teams? And look at when. I mean, you lose your two-time MVP as the season starts, and you have to shift gears at the very beginning of everything. Then you pull it all together with a tough loss early, and everybody's writing you off, and underdogs in a couple of games along the way. Here comes JT Barrett, and here comes this Ohio State offense, and we're setting records, and people are like, what is this? Well, schedule. Well, no, it's getting a little tougher. They're still doing it. Bam, you lose JT Barrett at the worst time, heading into your conference championship game against a team that people are going, oh, well, now reality's going to come crashing down on Ohio State. Here they're going to be down to quarterback number 3. And even the committee was hedging on where they were, and they said, we want to see how they play next week. And then, boom, 59 points later, on the plus side, they're finding themselves in the national semifinals, and still people write these guys off. And I understand, I get it. Like, I get all of that, but man, they do it again. That's what I'm saying, you guys. Seriously, it's not just that it's our Buckeyes or that Ohio State won, but that's a story that if you're not from, obviously some people don't like Ohio State, I know that, but that's a story that people can just get into, period. And I can see the Buckeyes being huge, nationally favored underdogs, if that makes sense. They'll be underdogs in the spread, but I can totally see a groundswell. Not that there's anything wrong with Oregon or anything. They've got a hell of a squad, man. That's going to be a game. Well, obviously we're going to talk about that a lot over the next week and a half, but not even that they're like villainous or anything, but I could see some people getting into the Buckeyes, especially because of how many people, even when you look at the people, the talking heads that pick the games and all of that. I know Mark May was all against the Buckeyes, but lots of people, I think ESPN, one panel had a clean sweep, a lot of people. So I think the Buckeyes winning in the fashion that they did against the team that they did is going to go a long way to pushing them into the national favoritism, as far as people getting behind the story and going, man, that's a bunch of guys. I know, hey, it's going to be a hell of a game. It's going to be a hell of a story. There's going to be a lot of different narratives that get told over the next week and a half, but man, you got to feel good. And so that's how we're starting this here today, the beginning of 2015. I can't think of a better way. You've got, you find out yesterday about LeBron, and we'll talk Cavs here a little bit later on, as they've got Charlotte coming up tonight, out for a couple of weeks, though. LeBron James just puts the Cavs in a deeper hole of work that they've got to do. So as I said, in the midst of all of that and the way 2014 ended, bam, here comes something really that you can sink your teeth into, that you can feel good about. And I see a couple of you guys in the chat room. That was one hell of a football game, even if the Buckeyes had not won. But man, they did win. But that was a hell of a game either way. And in the trenches, there was some big plays. Whenever you wrote off either team, boom, here came the other one, which is the mark of a great game and the mark of two great teams there. Even when the Buckeyes started to get that momentum going in the second half, Alabama's defense stepped up and their offense stepped up, and they made some plays and said, hey, there's a reason that we've done what we've done, man. And that's what made it all the better. But I've got to tell you, Dan Wismar, who's going to join us here in a little bit, actually, he'll join us in the next segment, and we'll pick up talking about some of this. But as we had said, this is still a good Alabama team, but it's not the Alabama team that it's been the last few years, and that the Buckeyes definitely could win this game. But I really started to feel even better about that before the game earlier in the day, when you look at some of those other bowl game results. When you look at Michigan State with what they did with Baylor, what a great game that was there, man. I mean, just unbelievable stuff there. But look at the Buckeyes' opponent in the Big Ten title game, and they take on, now I know, again, just like you could say with Bama, Auburn is not, the Auburn, either, but that's still an SEC team. That's a team, and Wisconsin's a team that the Buckeyes whitewashed. I mean, they pasted those guys. And to see that, like, I'm going, man, I'm telling you what, let's see what happens when this game kicks off here tonight. But I've got to tell you, the Buckeyes, I mean, again, we knew that they had a chance to win, but I was really feeling good. And you could feel, they fell down early, but you could feel why. Some of it was, not being able, obviously, field goals, touchdowns always beat field goals, as we know, but you turn the ball over. I mean, Zeke with that fumble there, and then the interception, and, you shoot yourself in the foot. But I'll tell you what, go to even the end of the half there when they're driving down, and some people were critical early on in the game about the play calling and the choices of certain plays that were called there on those drives that ended up into field goals. And then to come out with the trickeration when nobody saw it coming down at the end there, end of the half, and what a way, I mean, what a gutsy play call. Great throw. Great. I mean, I saw the jokes all over Twitter about, like the fourth and the fifth string quarterbacks getting in on the action here at this point, man. It's ridiculous. The Browns, that was my favorite tweet I think I saw yesterday was, everybody on the Buckeyes can play quarterback. Browns can't find one of them, but the whole damn Buckeyes team can come in and play quarterback and do it well. But man, the catch by Thomas, I mean, but a gutsy play. And then the halftime, the way they came out right off the bat, I mean, you could just feel Ohio State. It was momentum, like getting rolling downhill, man. But then Alabama said, hey, we're still in this thing too, man. This thing isn't over just yet. You could hear the panic across Buckeye Nation down the stretch as a 2-touchdown lead is not safe. And I agree, Charles. I mean, we can get into it. I'll talk about it with Dan when we start picking out the bits and pieces of the game. But, man, 2 timeouts. You run the ball 3 times down on that last possession if you're the Buckeyes, and you're guaranteed to run an extra 40 seconds off the clock on that 3rd down. Instead, they go, I guess, for the jugular on that big pass down the field. And speaking of, not necessarily on that one, but, and I guess it's easier to complain about this stuff after you win because it doesn't sound like sour grapes, but man, did that officiating seem like they were completely going to cost the Buckeyes some key things there in the second half of that game. I mean, there was some no calls on blatant pass interference, and obviously the punt in the end zone, and absolutely, and the 16-yard punt. I looked at little Jerry. I said, man, they might as well have went for it at that point, man. How does the punt jack backwards, though? You don't ever see a punt take a bounce like that. I thought for sure that the things may have been aligning against the Buckeyes there because the punt jacks backwards and cuts nearly 20 yards of field position in a bad way against the Buckeyes. 1 in 100 times, 1 in 1,000 times, maybe you'll see a punt hit the ground and bounce in that direction that quickly the way it did. And then all of that, it looked like, man, maybe this is not going to work out. But they did. They held on, got the interception at the end, and there it is. And the Buckeyes live to fight another day. It's going to be the Bucks and the Ducks in the national championship game. But speaking of the Ducks, they made me look so silly yesterday. I was talking to my son, and we were talking right as the 2 semifinal games were going. And no sooner did the game kick off, I said, "Listen, son, these are 4 good teams here, man. You're not going to see anybody go out here and blow anybody out, and there going to be any 60, 70 points scored in this one here, man." And yeah, well, then Oregon did its thing. And you know what's great for everybody that wants to look at this, and I'm sure I'm far from the only person making this observation here today, is if there was no playoff and if we had stayed with the status quo and if it was still BCS era or whatever, the 2 teams that are going to be playing each other in the national championship game wouldn't have met in the championship. It would have been the 2 teams that they beat. It would have been the 2 losers of the semifinals who most likely would have taken each other on to crown the national champion there. And how about Florida State? I know a lot of people took, well, as the words are coming out of my mouth, I see a comment in the chat room. A lot of people took some pleasure in seeing Florida State go down yesterday. They did. They didn't just go down. They went down hard. They gave up so bad in the second half. I mean, the announcers had no choice but to call them out on it because you could tell once they fell down by 3 scores there. I mean, it was a 12-point game, and then boom, it was 27 points minutes like nothing, and then it was all downhill. They were getting blown off the line. I mean, the running back was just clearing straight through at that point. No effort. They were done. And